beside the "Please wait to be seated" sign. And we watched a little more as we see all these empty tables and we see all this wait staff going here and there. And more time passed, and we still stood by the sign, waiting to be seated. Now, during this time, not one person ever came to say, "Hello, nice you're with us, we'll get you seated as soon as we can." In fact, it seemed like the people were completely ignoring us. So at first we're standing there by the "Please wait to be seated" sign, wondering if it was just us. But then gradually people started filling in behind us, one after the other, until there's about 6, 7 people, all standing now in a row behind this "Please wait to be seated" sign, and still not a person came to acknowledge that we were there, nor did they come to seat us. So any of you, after what must have been 10 going on maybe 15 minutes of that situation, we did what all of you would have done, right? We're going somewhere else. That's a shame, because I really like that restaurant, and I haven't been back since. And I don't know what was going on that day, but it was the exact opposite of what you would expect from hospitality. If we're talking about hospitality, in a restaurant, they're supposed to be really good at that. So at the very least, you got to train a host or someone to at least acknowledge. If someone had come up to me in those 10 minutes and say, "Hey, we're in the middle of a shift change, and we're just really, transitioning over right now," I would have stayed and enjoyed a nice meal. But not a peep. And I don't want to be critical of the waitstaff. I have no idea what was going on. I just chose to move on, Jacqueline and I. Now, the epitome of hospitality for me, besides this table, as that song greatly expressed, is that this table where we just come as we are, be who we are, and be welcomed. Besides this table, I think of my mother's kitchen table. I don't know how it was in your house growing up, but my mom was one of those. If I had friends who came over unannounced after school, she would set out to get out some snacks and drinks and make my friends feel welcome. I don't know what my mom might have had planned those days, but I always loved how my mom, when my friends would just drop by unannounced, would put aside her plans and make sure that my friends felt welcome. And it was usually never like 1 or 2 friends. I hung out with groups of people. I was in marching band, so we tend to hang out in groups. I'm glad I'm getting a nod, but that's kind of how marching band kids work, is we kind of hang out in a flock. And so sometimes that marching band flock would show up at my house, and there was my mom, ready to be the host of my friends and make them feel welcome. She didn't always know who they were, but because they were at the house, she got to know them, so maybe that was partly why she was so quick to welcome them, because she wanted to know who I was hanging out with. But my mom's kitchen should be a lot like the world is everywhere. That when we have people who cross our paths, or when we have people who show up, that we should be quick to put aside whatever we're doing and do what we can to make them feel welcome. Jacqueline and I have tried to embody that same spirit. We don't have children of our own, but she's a school teacher and I'm a preacher. And we also have neighbors. And so it's just so happened over the years that we've had people show up at our house. We've had neighbors come by who just want to share good news or who need to talk. I've helped people who drop by have a little bit of a marital trouble there in the neighborhood. I've had young people come with help for college decisions. I helped a former student of Jacqueline's pass a theology paper. I know why she showed up, because I'm the pastor. But we always try to make our home open. One of the people who stopped by was at the bottom battling a drug addiction. And there in my backyard, because I welcomed them, we started the road to recovery that is still a work in progress. And I don't know how you all in your homes growing up or even now, but I just think that's what we should do. Now, I'm a homebody. This isn't permission for you all just to show up. But if you do, we'll do everything we can to make you feel welcome, especially if you're struggling with something. And so I want to talk about hospitality. I want to talk about how, we can embody that more in our homes, as a church, in our lives. In the first century, hospitality was a really big deal. Basically, back then, you didn't book rooms if you were going on a journey on bookings.com or whatever you use. When Jacqueline and I travel, we usually travel with cell phones. And so as we get close to a town, we'll get on one of those hospital sites and see what's the best deal coming into town. But back then, if you were traveling, you basically showed up into a town. And especially if it was a Jewish town. And you would just go to the public square and you'd just wait. And you'd wait for someone to invite you into their home. Because that's just what happened back then. It was such an ingrained part of the Jewish faith and in other cultures in that region that you could expect to just show up in a town and somebody would eventually offer you hospitality. It's because hospitality to a guest was a great honor in society back then. It was a commandment from God. And it was one of the greatest things that you could do for another person. Of course, back then, I'm sure there was just as many risks involved as today. But it was such an important part of that Near Eastern culture. I was really struck when I started doing some work on the Greek word for what's the Greek word for hospitality? Well, the word is philoxenia. So the word philo is derived from the word filio, which is the word we have for brotherly love, like the city of Philadelphia, city of brotherly love. Filio is the word for love and refers to love that a family might have, a brother for a sister. And so the word hospitality begins with this idea of family love. And then we all know what xenia means, right? Xeno. It refers to the stranger, or to the other, or to the foreigner. So the word hospitality, literally taken, means familial love for the stranger. Not familial love for family, but this odd pairing of this word family and stranger taken together. Put together, you might translate it as the generous treatment of guests who may happen to be strangers. Now, in the world today, there is a lot of pressure for us to be xenophobic. So you all, I'm sure, have seen that word xenophobia or xenophobic somewhere in the media or out there today. But I have to lift up this biblical word that we could flip the words and say that the Bible calls us to be xenophilic, even if the world pressures us to be xenophobic. So the principle of the Bible is, how do we love? How do we show love to the strangers? How do we, instead of giving in to the fear of the stranger, how do we live out this principle of loving them instead? And the Bible is very clear that we should be more filio-xenic than we are xenophobic. In Leviticus we read, when a foreigner resides among you in your land, he or she must be treated as if they were neighbors. Love them as yourself. For you were foreigners in Egypt. I am the Lord, your God. So there, early in the Bible teaches us that even with strangers, God would have that we welcome them, that we treat them as family, that we love them as ourselves. And it's in the book of Hebrews that we get my favorite verse for hospitality in all the Bible, where we are told, do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers. For by so doing, some people have shown hospitality to angels without knowing it. The Bible tells us, do not neglect, but show hospitality to that stranger, because many have entertained angels unaware. It goes back to Abraham, who had 3 random people show up in his camp. And he rushed out of his way with Sarah to provide them hospitality, even though at first he didn't know who they are. But then later would come to find out that he was hosting the Lord God's self, right there in his camp. Now when Paul went to Corinth, he was a stranger. We know he writes 2 letters to the Corinthians, but the story that Sherry read was about Paul's first arrival to Corinth, a town he'd never visited, a town without a church, and a town that he had some trepidation in visiting. We pick this up in his first letter to the Corinthians, where he admits that he had come to Corinth in weakness and fear and much trembling. When he showed up, he was terrified. He was in a strange place. And as we remember from last week in my sermon on conflict, we read about what happened in Thessalonica, how Paul preached about how Jesus was the Messiah, and yet a disagreement turned into a big ugly riot, and Paul had to leave town, never to return. So he has every right to be afraid. But how does he know that the same thing isn't going to happen in Corinth? The other thing is he found himself in the big city. You know, Corinth was like the Chicago of the region back then. It was the business center. It was a Roman province. It was a collection of people from all sorts of culture. It was a vast population and diverse. Everyone from prominent business people, Greek, Jewish, slaves. And it was also the center of the temple of Aphrodite, the goddess of love. So it was a very decadent and diverse place to be. So he found himself a stranger in this place. He had just come from Athens, so he has just experienced 2 of the biggest cities that a Jewish person like him could experience. And what does he do except come upon Priscilla and Aquila? That there, when Paul finds himself a stranger, afraid, out of his element, he meets Priscilla and Aquila, and they take him in. And they find out that they share many things in common, and they start an active ministry together. One way you could look at it is that God knew that Paul was afraid. But as I talked about last week, God knew that he needed Priscilla and Aquila as well. See, Priscilla and Aquila ended up in Corinth because they had been inhospitably treated in Rome. Because they were Jews, they were kicked out of Rome by the emperor. And so they found themselves there in Corinth because they were shown no hospitality in their hometown. But God placed them there so they could show hospitality to a stranger who was afraid in a strange place. So we look at our focal text for today, and on one hand, we see how when we find ourselves a stranger, afraid and facing a new place or situation, God puts people in place to welcome and open themselves up to us. Just think about a time maybe you started in a new school and you show up on the first day and you don't know anybody, you don't know where your classes are, but then suddenly God starts surrounding you with people who help you find your class, who end up becoming good friends. And 4 years down the road, you've made the best friends that maybe you have for life. But still at one point, you were that scared freshman in high school. Or maybe on a new job. Or any of those situations where you all have found yourself afraid of a situation in unfamiliar territory. Hasn't God always sent someone? Hasn't there always been someone there to offer you support and help? So on one hand, we are to see in this scripture that God knows that we're afraid and find ourselves in strange places. But God's going to send people to help us, to welcome us. But we are also called not to be xenophobic, but xenophilic. We are called to be like Priscilla and Aquila, to be open to welcoming a stranger, if not in our homes, at least into our lives. And so how can we be more hospitable? How can we be more open to welcoming even strangers? The first thing we have to do is acknowledge that we're in an inhospitable society. I don't want to say that in the strongest sense, but in the general sense, we are kind of inhospitable people. As I mentioned, there is a great deal of xenophobia that we see mentioned or practiced in our world. But in the basis sense, even if we don't fear the stranger, as I said last week, we like to argue with those who are different from us. or we only like to hang out with people who are like us. We are good around friends and family, but we have troubles creating or even desiring relationships with those who are other or strangers to us. So let's just go ahead and admit maybe that's where we are, in our little comfort zone. And let us not forget that Corinth, as we begin in this perfect picture of this great hospitable situation. But when Paul gets around to writing a letter to the church that ends up getting started in Priscilla and Aquila's house, he has to address divisions. He has to address the fact that this church has become inhospitable to each other. And what they're fighting about is who they belong to. You know, do they belong to Apollos? Do they belong to Paul? Do they belong to Peter? Do they belong to Paul? Paul. They were arguing spiritual superiority, and they were treating each other inhospitably. As a society, we are more like, at times, what the Corinthians had become. Even though that church was born in great hospitality in Priscilla and Aquila's home. How are we like the people of Corinth? We still like to argue based on belonging to one side or the other. What frustrates me is we don't stop for funeral processions anymore. If you do, you get rear-ended. But even growing up, I remember my dad, my mom pulling off if a funeral procession was coming by. But we would rather just blow right on through. We don't stop for people stranded on the side of the road anymore. And sometimes I wonder if I should. But we take for granted that they probably have a cell phone. Surely they're okay. We don't know our neighbors. As I said, I know some of my neighbors. And I've had them in my home. But a lot of them I just know by a casual wave walking by. I don't know their names. We block or unfollow friends on social media who disagree with us. We make a lot of enemies rather than extend our families, as I like to say. And as I talked about last week, we like to needle each other, and we forget how much we need each other. So again, I'm generalizing, and maybe we don't fall under all of those categories, but we're really not as hospitable as we could be with one another as a society. So let's just admit it. And maybe some are more inhospitable than others, but let's not just admit it, let's resolve to do something about it. And the first thing we can do is to renounce self-interest. This is one of the great themes of the gospel, and it applies to hospitality, is that in our lives we should renounce our self-interest. In that passage I read from Luke, Jesus said, if you're throwing a dinner party, don't just invite your friends, don't invite your families. This was a horrible text to read for Mother's Day, because we have all these friends and family, I'm sure, that are here for Mother's Day. But listen to Jesus' point. Jesus says, don't just invite over the people that will do something for you. Don't just invite the people that will pay you back. Instead, when you give a banquet, invite the people who need to be there and who maybe can't pay you back. Invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind. That's how you will be blessed. The thing that he challenges in the first century is that if you accepted an invitation from a host, you were automatically to repay the favor at some point down the road. Now, this is how the system of hospitality often worked, is that if a host invited you to stay in their house in a town, then you were immediately obligated, if a family member or someone of their acquaintance came and asked you for hospitality, you were automatically obligated to receive it. They could pay you back down the road. But Jesus said, don't invite those who could just pay us back. Remember, if you haven't been with me before, every time a siren goes by, pray for the first responders and those to whom they are going. So that's why I always take a pause. Where was I going? In our lives, we base our associates in terms of what they can do for us. You know, don't we do that? Is that we base who we hang out with based on what we get out of it? We hang out with people that we are comfortable around. We like to surround ourselves with people that will agree with us or reinforce our opinions. I like to hang out with people who will laugh at my jokes, I'll be honest. And we sometimes surround ourselves or reach out to that person and think, what might this person give to us? What might we get out of this relationship? But our welcome of another ought not to depend on what's in it for us or our comfort level. Instead, we should think, what does the other person need from us that maybe only we can provide? What does that other person need regardless of our comfort level? And what everyone needs, in my opinion, is a whole bunch of Jesus' love. I'm going to brag on the church, not going to name names, but I had a friend named Jerry who showed up this morning. And I love the way this church works. Is because when Jerry showed up at the door, Jerry has a backpack, he's an older African-American man, and he's homeless. And yet when Jerry showed up to church, whoever let him in and steered him towards me, they said one of my friends was here. And Jerry is one of my friends. I've known him on and off, at least over the past several months. And he came here because he needed money to get flowers to take to his mother's grave. That was Jerry's journey this morning. And so the hospitality that we showed this morning, I have a church member who gives me $5 bills on occasion. I call it my $5 bill ministry, and that when someone comes by looking for lunch, I'm going to give them a $5 bill. So because of that church member, Jerry got a $5 bill. I gave him an extra for flowers. And yet where it all began is that whoever let him in at the door didn't stop him, didn't say, hey, you don't belong here. Instead, let Jerry know that he's welcome here. And he and I prayed in the sanctuary before he left. So this morning, we just had another one of those mornings where I have a sermon illustration that hospitality happened right here in our church. And the key in our lives, I'm going to give you a life-changing thing to sort of start wrapping up, is that the greatest way we can show hospitality is to see the other person, whoever it is, as Jesus standing before us. And I'm not making this up. Let me read Matthew 25, and I'll skip through it. Jesus said, the king will say to those on his right, come you who are blessed by my Father. Because I was hungry, you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me. And then as we know in the story, the people in the story say, well, Lord, when did we see you hungry, thirsty, sick? When did we see you as a stranger? And we hear that the king replied, truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. Imagine how your life would change if you lived by those verses of the Bible. Imagine how your life would change if you lived by that simple verse, whatever you do for one of the least of these, you do for Jesus. I'm going to just give you some fill in the blanks. But would you say blank to Jesus? Fill in the blank and think of some of the things you've said to someone this week. Would you have said that to Jesus? Or think of some of the things you've done, maybe to someone you knew or didn't know, and fill in the blank. Would you do that to Jesus? If we treat every single person in front of us as Jesus, our lives would radically change. Because he was serious. Whatever we do to the least of these, it's as if we done it unto him. Whoever welcomed Jerry into our sanctuary, into our church this morning, you did that to Jesus. Whoever, and who you are, gave me those $5 bills. You gave a $5 bill to Jesus this morning. And it can happen each and every day of our lives and of the life of this church. What I love about hospitality, this is my final point, is that it is a mini portrait of eternal salvation. In Psalm 23, it ends, surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. In the end of our lives, it's a picture of radical hospitality, where we believe that our ultimate end, our eternal salvation, is that God will welcome us to the place that God has prepared for us. And Jesus had the same notion. He said that I go ahead of you. In my Father's house there are many rooms, and I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go, then I will come and I will take you to that place so that you may be where I am. So our eternal sense of eternal life, of eternal salvation, is God's display of radical hospitality. That in the end, we like to say, God calls us home. That's hospitality. That's what our ultimate fate is all about. But the Bible also tells us that if that's what we put a lot of our faith in, then we have to realize that even now we are called to be holy as God is holy. If in the end we rest our faith on the fact that God one day will call us home, then we are challenged today to be holy as God is holy. And hospitality is part of God's holiness. And so we are to try to prepare places in our hearts for others. And we are to welcome them. For we were strangers in the presence of God, alienated by sin. But God's most hospitable act was to send Jesus as the invitation for all to know that they were welcome in the presence of God, that they were welcome here at this table. And if you thought about it, there was no self-interest on Jesus' part. It cost him his life. But because of that, there was everything for us. Thus we are sent with the word of welcome to all the strangers of the earth, that in Christ there is welcome for all. In God's family there is room for all. And when it comes to God's love, it is because God so loved the world that he sent his Son as that invitation to hospitality to show us that all are welcome, that we are to come as we are into his presence, and that we should go and do our